Madam President, throughout all of human history, in every generation, there are a handful of people who rise to the level of greatness. Despite adversity, danger, and sometimes impossible odds, these great men and women fight for what's right, push our society forward, and make America better for the next generation. That's been true for the last 230 years. Representative John Lewis, in our generation, who just passed away last week, was certainly the embodiment of this type of greatness. John was a titan in the struggle for civil rights and the equality of all races. Because of him, more Americans can enjoy their God-given rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John's lifelong fight against injustice began at a very young age, as we now know. When his local library banned African Americans from checking out books, a teenage John Lewis wrote a petition requesting and demanding equal access. From that point forward, John Lewis never backed down from the fight for what is right. He always remained peaceful despite receiving physical violence and going to jail for his protests. His commitment to nonviolence served as a guiding force in John's life. He founded the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee to fight for nonviolent resistance across America. In 1961, he participated in the Freedom Rides to protest segregation in public transportation. John's determination for equal rights only grew stronger and more effective over time. At age 23, he was one of the Big Six leaders of the March on Washington, where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. shared his dream for a better future for everyone. Later, John bravely marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, where he was beaten in what was called Bloody Sunday. The efforts of John Lewis and others finally paid off with the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. That bill gave African Americans the right to fully participate in our democratic republic. It pushed our country forward. That incredible victory may seem like the end of John's struggle for equal rights. In reality, it was just the beginning. For the rest of his life, John Lewis never lost sight of what the real fight involved. During his time in the Atlanta City Council and later in Congress, he never gave up the fight for justice. Today, our country is mourning a hero and a truly great American and a great Georgian. As we continue to say our goodbyes, we should also take this time to reflect on John Lewis's life and what he stood for. We should take this as a call to action to continue the effort to which he dedicated his life. The stain of injustice still marks our country. Just this year, there have been horrible tragedies that have shaken all of us to our core. Though John Lewis is no longer with us, we can still carry on his legacy. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor. And, sorry, Madam President. As if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to the consideration of Senate Resolution 660 submitted earlier today, and that the text be read in full.
Is there an objection? Without objection. Clerk will read the resolution.
Senate Resolution 660, honoring and commemorating the life and legacy of Representative John Lewis. Whereas the Senate mourns the loss of John Lewis, a titan in the struggle for civil rights and equality for all races, and commemorates his life and accomplishments. Whereas John Lewis was born during the era of Jim Crow in a segregated community in which racism and discrimination ran rampant. Whereas John Lewis's moral clarity and unwavering commitment to nonviolence made his first passions preaching and ministry. Whereas John Lewis fought his first battle against segregation when he was just a teenager, authoring a petition for equal access to his local public library, where African Americans had paid for the construction of the facilities, but were banned from checking out books. Whereas before his 21st birthday, John Lewis established his commitment to good trouble by organizing sit-ins at segregated restaurants and theaters. Whereas John Lewis helped found the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which advocated for civil disobedience and nonviolent resistance against segregation across the United States. bringing him to the forefront of the struggle of the United States for civil rights. Whereas John Lewis participated in the 1961 Freedom Rides, which were a series of trips that tested a new desegregation order of interstate transportation facilities and resulted in multiple beatings and the firebombing of the bus that John Lewis was supposed to be riding. Whereas at 23 years of age, John Lewis served as the youngest member of the Big Six, which planned the 1963 March on Washington and worked alongside Martin Luther King Jr., James Farmer, A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins, and Whitney Young to advocate for racial equality and justice for all. Whereas John Lewis courageously led protesters across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama, bravely bearing violence from the police to embody the struggle of the United States to live up to its founding ideals of equal justice under the law. Whereas the bravery of John Lewis during Bloody Sunday led Congress to pass and President Lyndon B. Johnson to sign into law the Voting Rights Act of 1965, ensuring that African Americans have the right to fully participate in the democratic process in the United States. Whereas John Lewis faithfully served the city of Atlanta between 1977 and 1981, embodying his election night promise to bring a sense of ethics and moral courage to the Atlanta City Council. Whereas John Lewis faithfully served the 5th Congressional District of Georgia in the House of Representatives between 1987 and 2020, serving as the conscience of the Congress by continuing his pursuit of justice and truth in the capital of the United States. And whereas the Senate commends John Lewis for his life and for embodying the spirit of love and dignity through his unceasing advocacy for reconciliation, justice, and the equality of all mankind. Now therefore be it resolved that 1, the Senate, A, has heard with profound sorrow and deep regret the announcement of the death of the Honorable John Lewis, a late member of the House of Representatives, and B, respectfully requests that the Secretary of the Senate, 1, communicate this resolution to the House of Representatives, and 2, transmit an enrolled copy of this resolution to the family of John Lewis, and 2, when the Senate adjourns today, it stand adjourned as a further mark of respect to the memory of the Honorable John Lewis.
Unanimous consent that the resolution be agreed to, the preamble be agreed to, and that the motions to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered.